My name is Camille, and I'm 34 years old. I heard voices in our bedroom and hid in the closet. My husband walked in with her, holding papers. She whispered, "What's your plan?" He laughed and said, $2 million when she dies. Accident on the stairs. I've already made her dizzy with the medication switch. I stood there in that closet, my hand over my mouth to keep from screaming, watching the man I'd loved for 8 years plot my murder with his mistress. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was that I'm not the weak, trusting fool they thought I was. If you want to hear how I turned the tables on the man who wanted me dead, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below telling me what city you're watching from. Now, let me tell you my story. It was a Tuesday afternoon in March when my entire world shattered. I remember the date exactly, March 14th, 3 days after our 8th wedding anniversary. 8 years of what I thought was a beautiful marriage. 8 years of building a life together. 8 years of trusting a man who was planning to kill me. I'd left work early that day. I'm a pharmaceutical sales director, and I was supposed to have a big client meeting in Midtown Atlanta, but it got canceled at the last minute. I had this splitting headache, the kind that makes your vision blur at the edges, and I just wanted to go home, take some medication, and lie down. If only I'd known that the medication waiting for me at home was exactly what was causing those headaches. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I pulled into our driveway around 2 in the afternoon. Devon's car was there, which surprised me because he usually worked until at least 6. Devon was a dentist. He owned his own practice in Buckhead. Successful, charming. Everyone loved Dr. Devon Matthews, the perfect husband with the perfect smile and the perfect life. What a joke that turned out to be. I walked into our house, this beautiful 3-story colonial we'd bought together 5 years ago. My heels clicked on the marble floor in the entryway, and I was about to call out Devon's name when I heard it. A woman's voice. Coming from upstairs. From our bedroom. My first thought wasn't suspicion. Isn't that pathetic? My first thought was maybe it's his sister, Vanessa. Or maybe one of his dental assistants needed to drop off some paperwork. Because I trusted him. I trusted him completely. I trusted him with my life. Which is exactly what he was counting on when he decided to take it. I started up the stairs quietly, not because I was trying to sneak, but because my head was pounding so badly that every sound felt like a hammer against my skull. And as I got closer to our bedroom, I could hear the voices more clearly. Devon's deep laugh, and then her voice. Sultry. Confident. Completely unfamiliar. "Are you sure about this?" she was saying. "What if someone suspects?" I froze on the stairs. My heart started racing. The bedroom door was open just a crack, and I could see movement inside. I should have burst in right then. I should have confronted them, but something stopped me. Some instinct I didn't even know I had whispered. "Wait. Listen first." I crept closer to the bedroom, and that's when I saw the closet. Our walk-in closet, the one I'd had custom built with all those beautiful shelves and the full-length mirror. The door was open. I could slip inside without them seeing me. And I don't know why, but that's exactly what I did. I stepped into that closet, pulled the door almost closed, leaving just enough of a gap that I could see through the wooden slats, and I waited. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure they could hear it, but they couldn't. They were too focused on each other. And then Devon walked into my view, and I saw her for the first time. She was young, late 20s, maybe, blonde, pretty in that generic, forgettable way. She was wearing tight jeans and a low-cut top, and she had her arms wrapped around my husband's waist like she owned him. Like she had every right to be in my bedroom, in my house, touching my husband. But it was what Devon was holding that made my blood run cold. Papers. Official-looking documents with a blue folder, and I recognized that folder because I'd seen it in Devon's office just a few months ago when he said he was organizing our financial paperwork. He spread the papers out on our bed. Our bed. The bed where we'd made love, where we'd talked about our future, where we'd dreamed about the children we were planning to have. And I watched through those closet slats as he showed this woman, this stranger, my life insurance policy. The $2 million policy, Devin said, and his voice was filled with this sick excitement that I'd never heard before. I increased it 6 months ago. She never even noticed. I felt like I was going to vomit. I literally had to clamp my hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. 6 months ago. 6 months he'd been planning this. 6 months of sleeping next to me, kissing me, telling me he loved me, while he plotted my murder. The woman, this blonde parasite, leaned over the papers, studying them. "And you're sure about the plan?" she asked. "What if someone suspects?" Devin laughed. He actually lied. Like we were discussing what to have for dinner, not how to kill me. "Who's going to suspect?" he said. "I've been the perfect husband. I've already switched her blood pressure medication to something that causes dizziness. The doctor thinks she's just stressed from work. She's complained about it 3 times already. But he just keeps telling her to rest more." And suddenly, everything made sense. The dizziness I'd been experiencing for the past 2 weeks, the vertigo that came out of nowhere, the way I'd almost fallen down the stairs twice in the last month. I'd thought I was just working too hard, not sleeping enough. My doctor, Dr. Richardson, had told me the same thing. "You're pushing yourself too hard, Camille. Slow down. Get more rest." But it wasn't stress. It was poison. My own husband had been poisoning me. "When?" the blonde asked, and her voice was eager, excited, like she was asking when Christmas was coming. 2 weeks, Devin said. "Maybe 3. Just need her dizzy enough. 1 push at the top of those stairs. Tragic accident. She works too hard, never sleeps. Everyone knows she's exhausted. No one will question it." I felt my legs go weak. I had to grab onto the closet shelf to keep from collapsing. He was going to push me down the stairs. He was going to make it look like an accident, and everyone would believe it, because he'd been setting up the narrative for weeks. The concerned husband, the overworked wife, the tragic fall. "And then we're free?" the blonde said, pressing herself against him. "We can finally be together? No more sneaking around?" Devin kissed her. In our bedroom. On our anniversary week. He kissed her with the same passion he used to kiss me, and I watched it all through those closet slats, tears streaming down my face, my hand still clamped over my mouth to keep from screaming. "With $2 million, baby," Devin said when he finally came up for air. "We can go anywhere. I'm thinking Cayman Islands first. Get out of the country until things settle down. Then maybe Europe. Paris. You've always wanted to see Paris." Paris. I'd been begging Devin to take me to Paris for our anniversary. Every year I asked, and every year he said we couldn't afford it, that the dental practice needed the money, that we should save for our future. And all that time, he was planning to take her to Paris with my life insurance money. "What about the funeral?" the blonde asked. "Won't you have to play the grieving widower?" "For a few months," Devin said, and I could hear the shrug in his voice. Like my death was just an inconvenience he'd have to deal with. "I'll cry at the funeral. I'll tell everyone how devastated I am. How she was my everything. How I don't know how I'll go on. And then, after a respectful period, I'll quietly move away. Start fresh somewhere else. With you. With us." She corrected him, and she placed his hand on her stomach. Devin's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Really?" he breathed. "You're sure?" 3 months, she said. "I found out last week. I was going to wait to tell you, but we're going to be a family, Devin. A real family." And that's when I stopped feeling sad. That's when the tears stopped. Because suddenly, I wasn't heartbroken anymore. I was furious. This man, this monster wearing my husband's face, had gotten another woman pregnant while married to me. He was planning to murder me so he could run off with his mistress and their baby. He was going to steal my life, my money, my future, and use it to build a happy little family with someone else, over my dead body. Which, ironically, was exactly his plan. But it wasn't going to work, because I'd heard everything. I'd seen everything, and I was going to make sure that Devin Matthews regretted the day he ever thought he could get away with this. They stayed in that bedroom for another 20 minutes, going over their sick plan in detail. How Devin had been researching accidental deaths at home. How he'd made sure to be extra loving and attentive lately so that everyone would talk about what a devoted husband he was. How he'd been transferring small amounts of money from our joint account into an offshore account I didn't know existed. How he'd already picked out a house in the Bahamas for them to live in after I was dead. Every word they spoke was another nail in Devon's coffin. Except it wasn't going to be my coffin they'd be closing. It was going to be his. Finally, they left the bedroom. I heard them go downstairs. Heard the front door close. Heard Devon's car start up and drive away. He was probably taking her back to wherever she lived so the neighbors wouldn't see her leaving our house. Always so careful. Always thinking ahead. What a brilliant criminal he would have been if he wasn't such an idiot. Because he made one fatal mistake. One error that was going to cost him everything. He left the insurance documents on the bed. I waited 10 full minutes to make sure they were really gone. 10 minutes of shaking and crying and feeling like I was going to throw up. And then I crept out of that closet, walked to our bed, and picked up those papers with trembling hands. There it was. My life insurance policy. $2 million death benefit. Increased from $500,000 just 6 months ago. Exactly like Devon said. And I'd never seen the paperwork because Devon handled all our boring financial stuff. He'd told me it was updated as part of our estate planning. Had me sign some papers without really reading them, because I'd trusted him. I took photos of every single page with my phone. Then I went to the bathroom and opened the medicine cabinet. My blood pressure medication was right there in its orange prescription bottle. But when I opened it and compared the pills to the reference photo I pulled up on my phone, they were different. Different color, different shape, different markings. Devon had switched my medication. He'd been poisoning me, making me dizzy so that when he pushed me down those stairs, everyone would believe it was an accident. The overworked wife who'd been complaining about dizziness finally lost her balance at the wrong moment. Tragic. Preventable if only she'd slowed down like her husband kept telling her to. I took photos of the pills. Then I went through Devon's side of the bedroom with a fine-tooth comb. And that's when I found it. Hidden in his sock drawer, underneath his expensive Italian socks that he loved so much. A burner phone. I turned it on, my hands shaking so badly I could barely enter the passcode. But Devon was predictable. It was his birthday. 0722. And suddenly, I had access to months of text messages between my husband and his mistress. Her name was Simone Parker. And apparently, she was a dental hygienist at Devon's practice. They'd been having an affair for 14 months. 14 months. More than a year of sneaking around behind my back. And I'd never suspected a thing. Because I was a trusting fool who believed in the sanctity of marriage and the goodness of the man I'd chosen to spend my life with. The messages were disgusting. Sexual. Romantic. Full of I love yous, and I can't wait to be with yous. And she'll be gone soons. They'd been planning my murder for 8 months. 8 months of detailed discussions about the best way to kill me and make it look like an accident. Fire was too risky. Car accident was too unpredictable. Poisoning alone took too long and might be detected. But a fall down the stairs? Perfect. Especially if the victim had been complaining about dizziness for weeks beforehand. I photographed every single message. Every disgusting, incriminating word. And then I made 3 phone calls. The first was to my brother, Terrence. Terrence is an FBI agent based in D.C. And he's the smartest, most strategic person I know. When he answered, I didn't even say hello. Devon is trying to kill me, I said, my voice shaking. There was a pause. Then, what? I told him everything. The closet. The conversation. The insurance policy. The switched medication. The burner phone. Everything. And when I was done, Terrence was silent for a long moment. Cam, he finally said, his voice deadly calm. Do not confront him. This is attempted murder conspiracy. If you confront him, he might panic and try to accelerate the plan. You need evidence. Hard evidence. And you need to act like nothing is wrong until we can build a case strong enough to put him away forever. Can you do that? Could I do that? Could I pretend everything was fine while living with a man who wanted me dead? Could I smile and kiss him and act like the loving wife while knowing he was planning to murder me? Yes, I said. Because the alternative was dying. And I wasn't ready to die. The second call was to my best friend, Yvette. Yvette is a criminal defense attorney, which I always thought was ironic because she's the most law-abiding person I know. But she knows the legal system inside and out, and I needed her expertise. We need to move carefully, she said after I told her everything. One wrong step, and he could panic and try to kill you sooner. We need to document everything. Build an airtight case. And we need to protect your assets. Have you checked your bank accounts? I hadn't. But when I did, my heart sank. Devin had been slowly draining our joint savings account. Small transfers, just a few thousand at a time, so I wouldn't notice. But over the past 8 months, he'd stolen $85,000 from our joint account and moved it to an account I didn't have access to. That's financial abuse on top of attempted murder, Yvette said grimly. We're going to nail him, Cam. I promise you. But you have to be strong. You have to play the part of the oblivious wife until we're ready to spring the trap. The third call was to my cousin, Dr. Maya Bennett. Maya is a toxicologist at Emory University Hospital, and she's brilliant. I told her about the switched medication and asked her to analyze the pills. Bring them to me, she said immediately. If he switched your medication, that's attempted murder, not just conspiracy. We can prove it scientifically. And Cam? Stop taking those pills immediately. Who knows what damage they've already done. So that's what I did. I stopped taking the medication. But I had to pretend I was still taking it, so I started spitting it out when Devin wasn't looking. And I had to keep pretending to be dizzy, because if Devin noticed I was suddenly better, he'd know something was wrong. Devin came home that evening around 6:30, like nothing had happened. He walked in with flowers and a big smile, kissed me on the cheek, and asked about my day. How's my beautiful wife? He said, setting the flowers on the kitchen counter. Roses. My favorite. Except now they just looked like guilt offerings from a guilty man. Tired, I said, which wasn't a lie. I was exhausted. Exhausted from fear and rage and heartbreak. My headache was so bad I came home early. I've been resting. You need to take better care of yourself, baby, Devin said, all concern and tenderness. You work too hard. Maybe you should think about cutting back your hours. Your health is more important than any job. My health. This from the man who was poisoning me. I wanted to throw those flowers in his face. I wanted to scream and rage, and tell him I knew everything. But I didn't. I smiled and nodded and said, You're probably right. That night, lying in bed next to a man who was planning to kill me, was the longest night of my life. Every time he shifted in his sleep, I tensed, wondering if this was it. Was he going to smother me with a pillow? Strangle me? I barely slept. I just lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, planning my revenge. The next morning, my brother called me with a plan. He was sending a colleague from the FBI's Atlanta field office to help me. A detective named Lauren Parrish who specialized in domestic violence cases. She would help me gather evidence and coordinate with local law enforcement when it was time to make the arrest. Detective Parrish came to my office that afternoon. She was a woman in her mid-40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude that immediately put me at ease. I've seen cases like this before, she told me. Husbands who plot to kill their wives for insurance money. And I'm going to tell you the same thing I tell every woman in your situation. You are incredibly brave for not running. But you are also in serious danger. This man has shown he's capable of planning your murder. We need to move quickly, but carefully. She helped me install hidden cameras throughout the house. Tiny, undetectable cameras in the living room, the kitchen, the bedroom, even the staircase. Everything would be recorded. Every conversation. Every movement. Every piece of evidence we needed to put Devin away. And then the real performance began. For the next 2 weeks, I played the role of the loving, trusting, dizzy wife. I pretended to take my medication every morning while Devin watched, then spit it out as soon as he left for work. I stumbled on the stairs, grabbing the railing dramatically, while Devin rushed to help me. I complained about my dizziness to anyone who would listen, building the narrative that Devin had so carefully constructed. And the whole time, I was gathering evidence. Dr. Maya analyzed the pills Devon had given me. They weren't blood pressure medication at all. They were a combination of beta blockers and medication designed to cause severe vertigo and dizziness. Long-term use could have caused serious damage to my heart and nervous system. Devon wasn't just planning to kill me. He was torturing me first. "This is attempted murder, Camille," Maya said, her face grim as she showed me the lab results. "This combination of drugs could have killed you even without the fall down the stairs. Your heart could have given out. You could have had a stroke. This is serious poison." Terrence's IT specialist, a guy named Jerome, who looked like he was about 19 but had the skills of a seasoned hacker, recovered every deleted file, text message, and search history from Devon's computer and phone. And what he found was damning. Devon had been researching accidental death at home for months. He'd visited websites about life insurance policies and murder investigations. He'd researched how long it takes for poison to leave the body. He'd looked up the success rate of murder for hire schemes versus doing it yourself. He'd even researched the Cayman Islands' extradition policies with the United States. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't a sudden impulse. This was premeditated, calculated murder. And Devon had documented every step of his planning like an idiot. We also discovered Devon's financial situation, and it was worse than I'd thought. He owed $180,000 to various creditors. The dental practice wasn't doing as well as he'd led me to believe. He'd borrowed $50,000 from loan sharks to cover his gambling debts. Gambling debts. I didn't even know Devon gambled. And Simone? She had a criminal record. Fraud. Identity theft. Forgery. She'd served 18 months in prison 5 years ago. This wasn't her first time conspiring to commit a crime. She was a professional con artist, and Devon was her mark. Except Devon had convinced himself that she loved him, that they were going to build a beautiful life together with my money. Pathetic. They were both pathetic. But I still had to live with him. I still had to smile and act normal while my skin crawled every time he touched me. Do you know what it's like to kiss a man who's planning to kill you? To feel his arms around you and know that those same arms are going to push you down the stairs in a few days? It was hell. Pure hell. But I endured it. Because I wanted justice. I wanted Devon to pay for every lie, every betrayal, every moment of terror he'd put me through. And I wanted him to know that I'd beaten him. That, the weak, trusting wife he thought he could manipulate and murder had outsmarted him at every turn. 1 week before Devon's planned accident, Terrence and Detective Parrish finalized the plan. They would let Devon attempt the murder, with me wearing a wire and police stationed outside. They'd catch him in the act, arrest him, and charge him with attempted murder. We'd have video evidence, audio evidence, physical evidence from the poisoned medication, and Devon's own words condemning him. But we needed one more piece of the puzzle. We needed to catch Simone too. So I did something risky. I called Simone's number from a blocked phone. "Hello?" she answered, her voice saccharine sweet. "Is this Simone Parker?" I asked, disguising my voice slightly. "Yes. Who's this?" "This is Dr. Richardson's office calling about your recent appointment. We need to reschedule your prenatal checkup." There was a pause. "I didn't make an appointment with Dr. Richardson." "Oh, I'm so sorry," I said. "I must have the wrong Simone Parker. Are you the Simone Parker who's 3 months pregnant?" Another pause. Longer this time. "How did you get this number?" I hung up. But I'd gotten what I needed. Confirmation that she was pregnant. Confirmation that this wasn't just an affair, but a full-blown alternative life that Devon was building while planning to murder me for the down payment. The days crawled by. Devon was getting more excited, though he tried to hide it. He was more attentive than ever, bringing me flowers, cooking dinner, telling me how much he loved me, all while watching me like a hawk, making sure I was still dizzy, still weak, still the perfect victim. And then came Friday, our anniversary dinner. Devon suggested we have a romantic evening at home, just the two of us. He'd cook my favorite meal. We'd drink wine, look at old photos, celebrate our love. Celebrate our love. The man who was planning to kill me that very night wanted to celebrate our love. I agreed, of course, smiled, and told him it sounded perfect. And then I prepared for war. Detective Parrish came to the house that morning while Devon was at work. She fitted me with a wire, a tiny microphone that would record everything. Police would be stationed in a van down the street, listening to every word. The moment Devon attempted to push me, they'd burst in and arrest him. "Are you scared?" Detective Parrish asked me as she tested the wire. "Terrified," I admitted. "But more than that, I'm angry. I'm so angry I can barely see straight. This man promised to love and cherish me. He stood in front of our family and friends and God and vowed to protect me. And now he's going to try to murder me. So yes, I'm scared. But I'm also ready to watch him pay." That evening, Devon came home with groceries and more flowers. He cooked an elaborate dinner, filet mignon with roasted vegetables and mashed potatoes. My favorite meal, the same meal he'd cooked for our first anniversary. We ate by candlelight. Devon poured expensive wine. He toasted to 8 wonderful years and many more to come. Every word out of his mouth was a lie, and I smiled through every single one. After dinner, Devon suggested looking at old photos upstairs. Our wedding album was in the bedroom closet. The closet where this had all started 2 weeks ago. "Are you sure?" I said, playing my part perfectly. The stairs, with my dizziness. "I'll help you, baby," Devon said, taking my arm. "I'll keep you safe. I always keep you safe. Liar. Murderer. Monster." We walked up the stairs together, Devon's hand on my elbow, steadying me. Or so it would seem to anyone watching. But I could feel the tension in his grip, the anticipation. He was planning every move, every step, waiting for the perfect moment. We reached the top of the stairs. Our bedroom was just down the hall, the thick carpeted hallway where a fall wouldn't be fatal. But the hardwood staircase behind us, that was where I was supposed to die. "Let me get the album," Devon said, walking toward the bedroom. But I stayed at the top of the stairs, waiting. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. The wire was recording everything. The police were listening. The cameras were rolling. Everything was in place. Devon came back with the wedding album in his hands. He stopped next to me at the top of the stairs. We were both standing there, so close to the edge. Dangerous, deadly. "Remember this day," Devon said, opening the album to our wedding photo. "The day I married the most beautiful woman in the world. I remember," I said softly. "I remember every promise you made me that day, Devon." Something flickered in his eyes. Uncertainty, guilt, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by that charming smile I'd fallen in love with 8 years ago. "I meant every word," he said. And then I felt it. His hand on my back. Gentle at first, then pressing, pushing. He was positioning himself to shove me down the stairs. This was it. The moment he was going to try to kill me, but I was ready. I stepped aside at the last second, grabbing the railing with both hands. Devon's momentum carried him forward, and he stumbled, catching himself before he fell. He turned to me, confusion all over his face. "Baby, you almost fell," he said, reaching for me again. "I was trying to catch you." And that's when I looked him dead in the eyes and said, "Were you, Devon? Or were you trying to finish what you've been planning for 8 months?" The color drained from his face. "What are you talking about?" "I know everything," I said, and my voice was like ice. "The switched medication, the $2 million insurance policy, your little love nest with Simone, the gambling debts, the offshore accounts, and most importantly, I know you were going to kill me tonight." "Camille, you're not making sense," Devon said. But his voice was shaking. "You're having some kind of episode. Your dizziness." "I'm not dizzy," I cut him off. "I haven't been dizzy for 2 weeks. Because I stopped taking the poison you were giving me. The pills you switched. The medication designed to make me fall. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out?" Devon's face went from pale to red. "I don't know what you're talking about. Your medication is exactly what the doctor prescribed." "Liar," I screamed, and months of pent-up rage came pouring out. "I was in the closet, Devon. March 14th. When you brought that whore into our bedroom and showed her my life insurance policy. When you discussed your plan to push me down the stairs, and make it look like an accident. I heard everything. For a moment, Devin just stared at me. Then understanding dawned on his face, followed quickly by panic. "Camille, please," he said, taking a step toward me. "Let me explain." "Explain what?" I said, pulling out my phone. "Explain this." I hit play on the recording from that day in the closet. Devin's voice filled the hallway, clear as day. The $2 million policy. I increased it 6 months ago. She never even noticed. Devin's hand reached for my phone, but I stepped back. "Don't touch me," I said coldly. "Don't you ever touch me again." "Where did you? How did you?" "I told you. I was in the closet. I heard everything. Every sick, disgusting word. Every detail of your plan to murder me. And I've spent the last 2 weeks gathering evidence. The toxicology report on the pills you switched. The messages between you and Simone on your burner phone. Your computer search history about accidental deaths and insurance fraud. The money you stole from our account. The house you bought in the Bahamas. I have everything, Devin." Devin's face went through about 5 different emotions in as many seconds. Shock, fear, anger, desperation. And finally he tried the one thing he thought might still work. He dropped to his knees. "Camille, please," he begged, tears streaming down his face. "I wasn't really going to do it. It was just talk. Just fantasy. I would never actually hurt you. I love you. You have to believe me." "Love me?" I said, and I started laughing. Not because it was funny. Because it was so absurd I couldn't help it. "You love me? You poisoned me. You researched how to kill me. You got another woman pregnant while planning my murder. That's not love, Devin. That's evil. It's not what you think," he said desperately. "Simone, it's not real. She doesn't mean anything. It's you I love. It's always been you. Please, Camille. We can work through this. We can go to counseling. I'll end things with Simone. I'll do whatever you want. Just please don't." "Don't what?" I said coldly. "Don't turn you in? Don't destroy your life the way you were planning to destroy mine? Why shouldn't I, Devin? Give me one good reason." "Because I'm your husband," he said, reaching for my hand. "We made vows. In sickness and health. For better or worse. You promised to stand by me. And you promised not to murder me," I said, jerking my hand away. "I guess we both broke our promises. Except mine is the one that carries a prison sentence." That's when I heard the sirens. Devin heard them too. His head whipped toward the window, and I saw the exact moment he realized he was finished. "What did you do?" he whispered. "I called the police," I said calmly. "Well, technically, they've been listening this whole time. I'm wearing a wire. Every word you've said tonight has been recorded. And they're about to come through that door and arrest you for attempted murder." Devin jumped to his feet, looking around wildly like he was considering running. But where was he going to go? The police were already surrounding the house. "You can't do this," he said, panic making his voice shrill. "Camille, please. I'll go to prison. My life will be over." "Your life?" I said, and my voice was soft but deadly. "What about my life, Devin? You were going to end my life. You were going to push me down those stairs and watch me die and then cry crocodile tears at my funeral while planning your vacation to Paris with your pregnant mistress. You were going to steal my money, my future, my existence, and use it to build a happy little family with someone else. And now you have the audacity to ask me for mercy?" The front door burst open. Heavy footsteps thundered up the stairs. Detective Parrish appeared first, followed by 4 uniformed officers. "Devin Matthews," she said, her voice ringing with authority. "You are under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and poisoning. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." 2 officers grabbed Devin's arms. He struggled, trying to pull away, still looking at me with those desperate, pleading eyes. "Camille, please," he shouted as they handcuffed him. "I love you. Don't do this. We can fix this. Camille." "I'm not Camille anymore," I said quietly. "Not the Camille you knew. That woman died in the closet 2 weeks ago when she heard her husband plotting her murder. I'm someone new now. Someone you created. Someone who's going to watch you rot in prison for what you tried to do." They dragged him away, still shouting my name, still begging for mercy he didn't deserve. And I stood there at the top of those stairs. The stairs where I was supposed to have died tonight. And I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Detective Parrish stayed behind after they took Devon away. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. "No," I said honestly. "But I will be." "Is it over?" "Not quite," she said. "We're arresting Simone Parker as we speak. She's at her apartment. We'll charge her as a co-conspirator. And then there will be a trial. It's going to be a long process, Camille. Are you ready for that?" "I've been ready since the moment I stepped into that closet," I said. And I was. I was ready for all of it. The trial. The testimony. The media attention. All of it. Because Devon was going to pay. They both were. The next morning, my doorbell rang at 7 a.m. I hadn't slept at all. I'd spent the night going through the house, packing up every photo of Devon, every reminder of our life together, and throwing it all in trash bags. 8 years of memories. And all of it was contaminated now. All of it was lies. I opened the door to find my brother Terrence standing there with coffee and bagels. "Thought you might need some breakfast," he said, pulling me into a hug. "And some company." I broke down crying in his arms. All the emotions I'd been holding back for 2 weeks came pouring out. The fear. The betrayal. The grief for the marriage I'd thought I had. The rage at what Devon had tried to do. All of it. "I'm so angry." I sobbed into Terrence's shoulder. "I'm so angry I can barely breathe." "Good," Terrence said firmly. "Be angry. Use that anger. Channel it. Because that anger is what's going to get you through the next few months. That anger is what's going to put Devon away for decades." He was right. The anger became my fuel. The story hit the news that afternoon. Atlanta dentist, arrested for plotting wife's murder. Every news channel picked it up. Devon's mugshot was everywhere. And suddenly, I was getting calls from everyone. Family, friends, former colleagues, people I hadn't spoken to in years. Everyone wanted to know if I was okay. Everyone wanted to express their shock and horror. Everyone wanted to tell me they'd always known there was something off about Devon. Except they hadn't. No one had known. Because Devon was that good at pretending. That good at lying. That good at being the perfect husband while planning my death behind closed doors. The worst call came from Devon's mother, Patricia. She called me that evening, crying hysterically. "Camille, please," she begged. "There's been some terrible mistake. Devon would never do this. He loves you. You know he loves you. Please tell them to drop the charges. Please. He's my son. He's my baby boy. They're going to destroy him." "He tried to destroy me," I said coldly. "He tried to kill me. He poisoned me for weeks. He planned every detail of my murder. And you want me to drop the charges?" "He's confused," Patricia insisted. "That woman, that Simone, she must have put ideas in his head. He would never do this on his own. Devon's a good man. You know that. You married him." "I married a lie," I said. "The Devon I fell in love with doesn't exist. He never existed. And I'm not dropping anything. Your son is going to prison, Patricia. For a very long time." I hung up on her while she was still crying. I felt bad for maybe half a second. But then I remembered that her baby boy had been planning to push me down the stairs and watch me break my neck on the hardwood floor. And my sympathy evaporated. Simone's arrest was just as satisfying as Devon's. They caught her at her apartment, packing a suitcase. She'd apparently heard about Devon's arrest and was planning to run. But where was she going to go? She had no money. Devon's offshore accounts were frozen. And she was 3 months pregnant with a dead man's baby. Financially dead, anyway. Devon's life was over. They charged Simone with conspiracy to commit murder and fraud. She tried to cut a deal immediately, offering to testify against Devon in exchange for a reduced sentence. But the prosecutors didn't need her testimony. They had everything they needed. Recordings, documents, physical evidence. Simone's cooperation was worthless. Still, she tried. She gave interviews to anyone who would listen. playing the victim. She didn't know Devon was serious. She thought they were just fantasizing. She never actually intended for anyone to get hurt. She was just a young woman in love who got caught up in a bad situation. Lies. All lies. We had the text messages. We had the recordings. We had proof that Simone had researched life insurance fraud, that she'd helped Devon pick out the house in the Bahamas, that she'd discussed baby names for their child using my insurance money. She was just as guilty as Devon. Maybe more so, because she had a criminal history. This wasn't her first rodeo. The preliminary hearing was 3 weeks after the arrest. I sat in that courtroom and listened to the prosecution lay out the entire case. Every piece of evidence. Every recorded conversation. Every damning detail of Devon's plan to murder me. Devon sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, looking nothing like the confident dentist I'd married. He looked small, defeated, broken. His lawyer tried to argue that this was all just talk, that Devon never actually intended to go through with it, that he'd just been venting about marital problems to his girlfriend. The judge wasn't buying it. "Mr. Matthews," Judge Anderson said, looking at Devon over her glasses, "you switched your wife's medication to poison that caused severe dizziness. You researched methods of committing undetectable murder. You increased her life insurance without her knowledge. You created an offshore account to hide money. And according to the wire recording from the night of your arrest, you physically attempted to push your wife down a staircase. This was not just talk. This was a calculated, premeditated attempt to murder your wife for financial gain. Bail is denied." Devon's lawyer tried to argue, but it was useless. Devon was going to stay in jail until trial, and I was going to sleep soundly for the first time in months. The trial was scheduled for 6 months later. 6 months of preparation. 6 months of depositions and meetings with prosecutors. 6 months of reliving the worst experience of my life over and over again. But I did it. Because I wanted justice. My testimony was on the 3rd day of the trial. I'd been dreading it and anticipating it in equal measure. This was my chance to tell the world what Devon had done to me. This was my chance to look him in the eye and make sure he understood exactly what he'd destroyed. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Rebecca Chen, walked me through everything. Meeting Devon, our courtship, our marriage, the life we'd built together. And then she asked me about March 14th. "Can you tell the jury what happened on that day, Mrs. Matthews?" I took a deep breath and began. "I came home early from work with a headache. I heard voices in my bedroom. A man's voice and a woman's voice. I hid in the closet, thinking maybe I'd surprise my husband. But what I heard instead changed my life forever." The courtroom was absolutely silent as I recounted every detail. The insurance policy, the plan to push me down the stairs, the switched medication, Simone's pregnancy, all of it. "And how did you feel?" Rebecca asked. "When you heard your husband plotting your murder?" "I felt like I was dying," I said, my voice breaking despite my determination to stay strong. "Not physically, although he was poisoning me, but emotionally, spiritually. The man I loved, the man I trusted with my life, was planning to end that life for money. I felt betrayed, terrified, heartbroken, and then I felt angry, so angry I could barely see straight. Because I realized that every moment of our 8-year marriage had been a lie. Every I love you, every kiss, every promise, all of it was meaningless. He never loved me. He only loved what I could give him. And when he wanted more than I could give, he decided to take it by force. I looked directly at Devon as I spoke. He couldn't meet my eyes. He stared at the table, his hands clasped in front of him, looking like he wanted to disappear. "Do you see your husband in this courtroom?" Rebecca asked. "Yes," I said. "He's sitting at the defense table. But he's not the man I married. The man I married doesn't exist. He was a character Devon was playing, a mask he wore to hide the monster underneath." Devon's lawyer objected, but the judge overruled her. My testimony was relevant. My feelings were relevant. The jury needed to understand the depth of Devon's betrayal. The defense tried to tear me apart on cross-examination. Tried to suggest that I'd misunderstood what I'd heard. That maybe Devon and Simone were just engaging in a dark fantasy. not actually planning a murder. That my interpretation of events was skewed by paranoia or mental illness or work stress. But I didn't break. I stayed calm. I stayed focused. And I told the truth. I know what I heard, I said firmly. I have recordings. I have video evidence. I have the toxicology reports on the medication he gave me. I have his search history and his text messages and his financial records. This wasn't a fantasy. This was a plan. A detailed, calculated plan to murder me and steal my money. And if I hadn't hidden in that closet, if I hadn't overheard that conversation, I would be dead right now. The trial lasted 3 weeks. 3 weeks of testimony from doctors, forensic experts, financial analysts, and investigators. 3 weeks of evidence that buried Devin deeper and deeper. Simone testified as part of her plea deal, but her testimony only made things worse for Devin. She admitted to the affair, admitted to discussing the murder plan, admitted to helping Devin research ways to kill me and make it look like an accident. Her lawyer tried to paint her as a victim of Devin's manipulation, but the jury wasn't buying it. The closing arguments were powerful. The prosecution laid out a timeline of Devin's plan, showing how carefully he'd orchestrated every detail. The defense argued that Devin had never actually intended to go through with it, that he'd been caught up in a toxic relationship with Simone, that he deserved a second chance. But the evidence was overwhelming, and after 4 hours of deliberation, the jury came back with their verdict: guilty on all counts. Attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, poisoning, financial abuse. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Devin collapsed in his chair when he heard the verdict. His lawyer put a hand on his shoulder, but he was inconsolable. His mother, sitting in the gallery, let out a wail of anguish. And me? I sat there feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. Justice. Finally. The sentencing hearing was 2 weeks later. The judge listened to impact statements from my family, my friends, and me. And then she addressed Devin directly. "Mr. Matthews," Judge Anderson said, her voice hard as steel, "you have been found guilty of attempting to murder your wife, a woman who loved you and trusted you, for financial gain. You poisoned her. You planned her death in meticulous detail. And you would have succeeded if she hadn't been smart enough and brave enough to fight back. You have shown no remorse for your actions. You have not taken responsibility for the pain and terror you inflicted. Therefore, I am sentencing you to 25 years in the Georgia State Prison. You will be eligible for parole in 20 years. Court is adjourned." 25 years. Devin would be 63 when he got out. His dental practice was gone. His reputation was destroyed. His life was over. And I felt nothing but relief. Simone was sentenced separately. Her plea deal got her 12 years. She'd be released when she was 40, with a felony record and a child she'd given birth to in prison. The baby was placed with Simone's sister. That innocent child would grow up knowing their father was a murderer, and their mother was his accomplice. The divorce was finalized 3 months after Devin's sentencing. I got everything. The house. The savings account, or what was left of it after Devin's stealing. My retirement accounts. My car. Everything. Devin got nothing but his legal bills and his prison sentence. I sold the house immediately. I couldn't live there anymore. Every room was contaminated with memories of Devin. Every corner held ghosts of the life I thought I'd had. I bought a beautiful modern condo downtown with state-of-the-art security. Cameras everywhere. Alarms on every door and window. No one was ever going to sneak up on me again. I started therapy twice a week. PTSD, my therapist said. From living with a man who was actively trying to kill me. From the betrayal. From the terror of those 2 weeks when I knew Devin's plan but had to pretend everything was normal. It would take time to heal, she said. Maybe years. Maybe forever. But I was alive. I was free. And Devin was in prison. That had to count for something. I threw myself into my work, and it paid off. Within a year, I was promoted to regional vice president. My salary jumped to $400,000 a year. I was financially independent in a way I'd never been before. I didn't need anyone. I didn't have to depend on anyone. I could take care of myself. But more than that, I wanted to help other women who were in the situation I'd been in. Women who were being abused or manipulated or threatened by the men they'd trusted. So I started a foundation. I called it Trust Your Instincts. The mission was simple: help women recognize the warning signs of dangerous relationships, provide resources for those trying to escape, and fund legal representation for women who couldn't afford it. I used my own money to get it started. The $2 million from my grandmother's inheritance, the money Devin had been planning to steal. I put it all into the foundation. And within the first year, we'd helped 50 women escape dangerous situations. I started speaking at events, conferences, women's groups, domestic violence shelters. I told my story over and over again, hoping that maybe it would help someone else recognize the danger in their own life. And then I wrote a book, The Closet Saved My Life: How I Discovered My Husband's Plan to Murder Me and Fought Back. It was cathartic to write it all down. Every detail, every emotion, every moment of terror and rage and ultimate triumph. The book became a bestseller. Suddenly, I was doing interviews on national television. News outlets wanted my story. Oprah's producers called. I was invited to speak at colleges and universities about domestic violence and financial abuse. My life had purpose again. Not the purpose I thought I wanted, being a wife and someday a mother, but a different purpose. A better purpose, maybe. Helping other women survive. It was 18 months after Devin's arrest when I met Jordan. I was at a charity fundraiser for the foundation. One of those fancy events with cocktails and silent auctions and speeches about making a difference. I hate those events, honestly. Too much small talk. Too many people asking me to relive the worst experience of my life. But it was for a good cause. So I put on a smile and worked the room. And then I saw him. Tall, handsome, kind eyes. He was standing by the bar, looking just as uncomfortable as I felt. Not a fan of these things either, I asked, walking up beside him. He turned and smiled. Is it that obvious? Only to someone who feels the same way, I said. I'm Camille. Jordan, he said, shaking my hand. Jordan Ellis. I know who you are. I read your book. Of course he did. Everyone had read my book by then. It was uncomfortable sometimes, knowing that strangers knew the most intimate, painful details of my life. But it came with the territory. I hope you got something useful out of it, I said, trying not to sound bitter. I did, actually, Jordan said seriously. My wife. My late wife. She died 3 years ago. Cancer. And before she got sick, I remember she tried to tell me a few times that she felt like something was wrong. That she wasn't herself. And I kept telling her she was fine. She was just stressed, she should rest more. Just like your doctor told you. And I wonder sometimes, if I'd listened to her instincts instead of dismissing them, maybe we would have caught it earlier. I'm so sorry, I said. And I meant it. But you can't blame yourself for that. Cancer is unpredictable. Maybe, Jordan said. But your book taught me something important. Trust people when they say something is wrong. Don't dismiss their instincts. Don't tell them they're overreacting. Because sometimes, those instincts are the only thing keeping them alive. We talked for the rest of the night. About his wife. About his daughter, Zoe, who was 7. About his work as an architect. About my foundation. About healing and grief and moving forward. And at the end of the night, he asked for my number. I'd like to take you to dinner sometime, he said. If you're interested. No pressure. I know you've been through hell, but I think you're remarkable, Camille. And I'd like to get to know you better. I almost said no. The thought of dating again, of trusting another man, made my skin crawl. But there was something about Jordan. Something genuine. Something safe. Okay, I heard myself saying. Dinner sounds nice. Our first date was the following week. Jordan took me to a quiet Italian restaurant, nothing fancy, just good food and good conversation. He told me about his wife, Caroline, and how much he'd loved her, how hard it had been to lose her, how he was trying to be both mother and father to Zoe. And I told him about Devin, about the closet, about the trial, about the foundation, All of it. Because if we were going to do this, if I was going to even consider letting someone into my life again, he needed to know everything. I'm probably going to have trust issues forever, I said bluntly. I'm probably going to be paranoid and suspicious and difficult. I'm damaged, Jordan. Severely damaged. And I understand if that's too much baggage. Jordan was quiet for a moment. Then he reached across the table and took my hand. Camille, he said gently, you're not damaged, you're strong. You survived something that would have broken most people. You didn't just survive it, you fought back and won. You turned your trauma into something meaningful that's helping other people. That's not damage. That's resilience. I still have nightmares, I admitted. About Devon. About that night. About what could have happened if I hadn't hidden in that closet. That's normal, Jordan said. Caroline had nightmares too, at the end. About dying. About leaving Zoe without a mother. Trauma does that, but it doesn't define you. You're so much more than what happened to you. We dated slowly. Very slowly. I wasn't ready to rush into anything, and Jordan respected that. He never pressured me. Never pushed for more than I was comfortable with. He was patient and kind and understanding in a way I didn't know men could be. After 6 months, he introduced me to Zoe. A beautiful little girl with her mother's eyes and her father's smile. She was shy at first, but we bonded over baking cookies and painting. She didn't know my story. Jordan had wisely decided that a 7-year-old didn't need to know about murder plots and prison sentences. I like Camille, Zoe told her father one day, and my heart melted. She's nice. And she makes good cookies. High praise from a 7-year-old. My brother Terrence thoroughly vetted Jordan, of course. Ran background checks. Verified his story. Made sure there were no red flags. It was intrusive and probably overprotective, but after what I'd been through, I wasn't taking any chances. Jordan came up clean. Not even a parking ticket. He was exactly who he said he was. A widower. A father. An architect. And a genuinely good man. 2 years after we started dating, Jordan proposed. Nothing elaborate. Just the two of us having dinner at his house after Zoe had gone to bed. He pulled out a ring and said, Camille, I know you've been hurt. I know you have every reason to never trust anyone again. But I love you. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving to you that not all men are like Devon. That you can be safe, and loved, and cherished. Will you marry me? I said yes. Not because I was completely healed. Not because all my trust issues had magically disappeared. But because Jordan had shown me, through 2 years of patience and consistency and genuine kindness, that he was worth the risk. We had a prenup. I insisted on it. And Jordan completely supported the decision. Complete financial transparency. Separate accounts. Clear boundaries. It wasn't romantic maybe, but it was smart. And after what I'd been through, smart was more important than romantic. The wedding was small. Just close family and friends. My brother Terrence walked me down the aisle. Zoe was the flower girl. Yvette was my maid of honor. And when the officiant asked if anyone objected, I actually held my breath for a second, half expecting Devon to somehow appear. But he didn't. He was in prison where he belonged. And I was free to start a new life with a good man. 5 years have passed since Devon's arrest. 5 years of healing and growing and learning to trust again. Jordan and I have been married for 3 years. We have a son now, Malcolm, who just turned 2. Zoe is 12 and thriving. We're a family. The foundation has helped over 2,000 women escape dangerous situations. We've expanded to include legal services, safe houses, financial literacy programs, and job training. We've saved lives. I know we have, because women contact me all the time to tell me their stories, to thank me for giving them the courage to fight back. One woman in particular stays with me. Her name was Naomi. She was 26, married to a man who was planning to kill her for her inheritance. She'd overheard him discussing it with his brother. And instead of running, instead of confronting him, she contacted my foundation. I personally walked her through the process of gathering evidence, connecting with law enforcement, building a case. And when her husband was arrested, she called me crying. You saved my life, she sobbed. If I hadn't heard your story, if I hadn't known what to do, I'd be dead right now. No, I told her firmly. I showed you the path. But you saved your own life. You were brave enough to fight back. You were smart enough to document everything. You refused to be a victim. That was all you, Naomi. That's what I try to tell every woman who contacts the foundation. You can survive this. You can fight back. You don't have to be a victim. Trust your instincts. Document everything. Build your team. And know that you are stronger than you think. Devin is still in prison. He'll be eligible for parole in 15 more years, when he's 58. His mother still writes to me sometimes, begging me to forgive him, to write a letter supporting his early release. I never respond. Devin made his choices. He has to live with the consequences. I've heard through the grapevine that he's not doing well in prison, that he's been in solitary confinement multiple times for fights with other inmates, that he's lost weight and looks 10 years older than he is. Good. I hope every day in that cell is misery for him. I hope he thinks about what he did every single morning when he wakes up. I hope he regrets it for the rest of his miserable life. Simone was released last year after serving 8 years. Good behavior, apparently. She's working minimum wage at a grocery store, living with her sister, barely scraping by. She tried to contact me once, asking for forgiveness and closure. I had Yvette send her a cease and desist letter. I don't owe Simone anything. Not forgiveness. Not closure. Not a single second of my time. Her child, Devin's biological child, is being raised by Simone's sister. That innocent kid will grow up knowing their parents are a murderer and his accomplice. I feel bad for the child. They didn't ask to be born into this mess. But I can't help them. I can barely handle my own trauma without taking on anyone else's. Last month was the 10-year anniversary of that day in the closet. March 14th. 10 years since my life changed forever. 10 years since I discovered the man I loved was planning to murder me. The foundation held a gala to celebrate 10 years of operation. Over 500 people attended. Survivors, donors, advocates, people who believed in the mission and wanted to help. I gave a speech. I've given hundreds of speeches at this point, but this one felt different. More important. Somehow, 10 years ago, I said, standing at the podium, looking out at the crowd, I hid in a closet and overheard my husband plotting my murder. In that closet, I had a choice. I could be a victim, or I could be a survivor. I could let fear paralyze me, or I could let anger fuel me. I could give up, or I could fight back. And I chose to fight. That choice saved my life. But more than that, it gave my life new meaning. Because that choice led to this foundation. It led to the work we do. It led to the 2,000 women we've helped escape dangerous situations. It led to lives saved and futures reclaimed. My ex-husband wanted me dead. He wanted to steal my money, my future, my very existence. And instead, I took his freedom. I took his reputation. I took everything he valued and used it to build something beautiful, something meaningful, something that helps people. That's the best revenge. Not hatred, not bitterness, but transformation. Taking the worst thing that ever happened to you and turning it into something that helps others. To every woman here tonight, whether you're a survivor or an ally or a supporter, thank you. Thank you for believing that we can make a difference. Thank you for standing with women who need help. Thank you for being part of this mission. And to anyone watching or reading this who is in a dangerous situation, trust your instincts. Listen to that voice inside you that says something is wrong. Document everything. Reach out for help, and know that you are stronger than you think. You can survive. You can fight back. You can win. I did. And if I can do it, so can you. The crowd gave me a standing ovation. People were crying. Strangers came up to hug me, to thank me, to tell me their own stories of survival. And later that night, when I got home to Jordan and the kids, when I kissed Malcolm goodnight and tucked Zoe into bed and collapsed on the couch with my husband, I felt something I never thought I'd feel again. Peace. Not complete peace. I still have nightmares sometimes. I still have moments of paranoia where I check the locks 3 times and make sure the security cameras are working. I still have triggers that send me spiraling back to that closet, listening to Devin plan my death. But I also have joy. I have love. I have purpose. I have a family that I built on truth and trust and genuine affection. Devin wanted to bury me. But instead, he planted me. And I grew into something stronger and more resilient than he could have ever imagined. People sometimes ask me if I think about that day in the closet, if I replay it in my mind, if I wonder what would have happened if I'd done things differently. Of course I do. How could I not? That day changed everything. But I don't regret hiding in that closet. I don't regret listening. I don't regret the 2 weeks I spent gathering evidence while living with a man who wanted me dead. I don't regret fighting back. Because if I hadn't hidden in that closet, I'd be dead. Devin would have pushed me down those stairs, collected his $2 million, and built a happy life with Simone and their baby using my money. Instead, he's in prison. I'm free. He lost everything. I built a new life. That's not luck. That's not fate. That's justice. That's strategy. That's survival. And to anyone listening to my story, anyone who's in a situation that feels wrong, anyone who has that little voice in their head saying something isn't right, listen to that voice. Trust your instincts. They're trying to save your life. Mine did. And I'm still here. Alive. Free. Happy. Victorious. 10 years ago, I was a naive woman who trusted too easily and loved too deeply. A woman who believed in the sanctity of marriage and the goodness of the man she'd chosen. Today, I'm a warrior, a survivor, an advocate, a woman who refused to be a victim and instead became a victor. Devin Matthews tried to kill me. He failed. And now he rots in prison while I thrive in freedom. That's the story I want my children to know. Not that their mother was almost murdered, but that their mother fought back and won. That she took her trauma and turned it into purpose. That she survived and then taught others to survive too. Because that's what this is all about. Not revenge. Although I won't lie and say that watching Devin get sentenced to 25 years didn't feel amazing. But about transformation. About taking the worst thing that ever happened to you and using it as fuel to become the best version of yourself. I am not the woman I was 10 years ago. That woman died in that closet when she heard her husband plotting her murder. I am someone new. Someone stronger. Someone wiser. Someone who knows that survival isn't enough. You have to thrive. You have to take back your power. You have to refuse to let the people who hurt you define your story. Devin wanted me dead. Instead, I'm more alive than I've ever been. He's in prison. I'm free. He lost his career, his reputation, his future. I built a foundation, wrote a best-selling book, found love again, and created a family. He gets to spend the next 15 years behind bars, wondering where it all went wrong. I get to spend the next 15 years watching my children grow, building my foundation, and helping other women escape the fate he had planned for me. That's not luck. That's not karma. That's choice. I chose to fight back. I chose to gather evidence. I chose to be strategic instead of emotional. I chose to destroy him before he could destroy me. And I won. So to everyone watching this, everyone reading this, everyone who's heard my story and wondered if they could do the same thing. Yes, you can. You absolutely can. Trust your instincts. Document everything. Build your team. Protect yourself. Fight back. And know that you are capable of surviving anything. I proved it. And if I can do it, anyone can. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for supporting the foundation. Thank you for believing that women deserve to be safe, to be free, to be alive. And to Devin, if you ever see this from whatever prison cell they're keeping you in, I won. You lost. And every day you spend behind bars is a day I spend living the life you tried to steal from me. I hope it was worth it. Actually, no. I hope it haunts you every single day for the rest of your miserable life. Because I'm free. I'm happy. I'm thriving. And you? You're exactly where you belong. In prison. Alone. Forgotten. While I'm out here, living my best life, helping other women survive, and proving every single day that I'm stronger than you ever imagined. That's my story. That's my truth. That's my victory. I hid in a closet and heard my husband plotting my murder, and instead of dying, I fought back. And I won.